Hi, my name's Allison, and when I was just 5 years old, my mom passed away. For years, it was just me and my dad. We would go on adventures every weekend together, hiking in the nearby mountains, camping in the forest, reading books together in our backyard. We were like best friends. But then one day, everything changed. My dad met Sylvia. Pretty soon after, Sylvia and her daughter Elsie moved in, and we became one big happy family. Not. Okay, when my dad asked me how I felt about it all, I just smiled and said, "I'm happy if you are." I don't normally tell lies, but he really did look so happy, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Even when he asked her to marry him, I baked a cake to celebrate and tried my hardest to be okay with it. It wasn't so bad when they first moved in. Dad is a bit messy, so it was nice to have some other females around the house to help out a bit. And Sylvia is super organized, so she really took control and did the house up. It looked great. But then it started to get a bit much. Elsie complained that my room was bigger than hers, so Dad agreed to break down my wall, making my room smaller than hers. I tried to tell him that wasn't fair. It was my house first. But Dad just said we need to keep everyone happy. Dad works at the university, and sometimes he has to work late. I don't know when it started, but one day, Sylvia just began treating me differently. On the nights Dad was at work, she'd say it was my turn to cook, and she always made me help Elsie with her homework, saying that I was lucky to be so smart and that I should share my smartness with my sister. I started to dread nights alone with them, as they had already started to gang up on me. One night, I was in the bath, and I heard them laughing nearby. I quickly dried off and tiptoed out into the hall. I could see them through the crack in the door of my dad's study. They were looking at old photos of my mom and saying she was ugly, and what had my dad been thinking when he had married someone like that? Elsie kept saying how much more beautiful Sylvia was than my mom. I couldn't bear hearing this. And then I heard Sylvia saying that she had taken $400 from my dad to buy a new handbag, but she didn't even tell him. I was getting more annoyed. My dad wasn't doing that well financially, and we don't usually buy expensive clothes or bags. The next thing I heard was glass smashing. I ran into the study, almost dropping my towel on the way. When they saw me, they quickly jumped up and said they'd heard a crash and come running in. On the floor was the framed photo of my mom and dad on their wedding day, and one of us as a family of 3. The glass was smashed and the photos were slightly creased. They were lying to me. They had knocked them off the shelf. I looked at them both with tears in my eyes and ran to my room. As soon as my dad got home, I told them everything they'd said and done. Dad didn't believe me at all and said accidents happen and that Sylvia would never be so cruel to say something like that about Mom. He kept saying how Sylvia loves me and thinks the world of me. The next few weeks just got worse. They started teasing me about my skin. I'd recently got a few pimples, and I felt so self-conscious about them. Elsie even said that I'm dirty, and that's why I have so many pimples and no date for the school dance. That day, it happened to be my dad's birthday, so I was making his favorite meal. While I was cooking, Sylvia started shouting at me to clean up her toenails that she'd just cut. They were all over the floor. And then she said I needed to hurry up so I could write Elsie's history paper for tomorrow. I said I was busy, and couldn't Elsie do it by herself? Then she started screaming at me so much that she actually threw her cup of boiling hot tea at me. I crouched onto the floor, and thankfully it missed me by an inch. I was still shocked when she started shouting at me louder and saying she doesn't understand why I'm in her life and that she doesn't even love my father anymore. At that exact moment, my dad walked through the door. He saw me cowering by the stove and Sylvia marching towards me with her arms raised. He looked straight at Sylvia and said at the top of his voice, "Stop!" Turns out, he'd come home early to surprise us for his birthday. And when he'd heard Sylvia bossing me around, he'd hid around the door listening. Sylvia burst into tears and said she didn't mean it, she was having a bad day, and it was just a big misunderstanding. Before she could even finish, my dad came towards me and gave me a huge hug. He apologized to me for not believing me. And then he turned to Sylvia. He ordered her to pack her and Elsie's stuff and get out of his house immediately. She was hysterical by then and was begging to stay. But my dad said he was done. He would be filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Then he turned back to me, gave me a kiss on my head, and said this was turning out to be the best birthday he'd had in years. Finally, it was just me and my dad again. What do you think of this story? Please feel free to share your stories and comments in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.